It is time for a day here at Bryant-Denny Stadium, Alabama's annual spring game between the Alabama Crimson and the Alabama White. With that, welcome into spring football coverage. I am Matt Berry, so happy to be a part of a little college football here on a Saturday. I want to bring in Matt Stinchcomb. When you talk about Alabama football, Matt, 2 goals. SEC championship, national championship. Lucky for Nick Saban, he's got 2 stars coming back and a quarterback and maybe the best player in all of college football.
Yeah, what a luxury, right? And you already checked one of those boxes and nearly checked the second one, that national championship game in the rematch versus Georgia. And to know that you've got talent on both sides of the ball like that, quarterback obviously a game-changing position. But what about Will Anderson Jr. coming off of the edge? A guy that can change the complexion of a game, certainly crawls into the mindset of every offensive coordinator that has to line up across of any defense where number 31 for the Alabama Crimson Tide is lined up. What a fantastic talent both those guys are. And obviously Bryce Young, the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, and a guy that's probably going to be running from number 31 quite a bit here today.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Stitch, yeah. Oh, by the way, Bryce Young, the best player in all of college football, a Heisman Trophy winner. We will see him today detail the story of some of the places and weapons he has to replace. It's a spring game, so the rules are going to be different this afternoon. You saw Bryce. There'll be other players that are in the black jerseys. You cannot hit them. They are not live. You've got to tag them. A couple of other bullet points. Kickoff and kick returns also tag. No rush and fair catching on punts and field goals. We've got a running clock. 15-minute quarters. Halftime is 12 minutes. So look, we know that there isn't a winner in this game, but Matt Stinchcomb, Chris Budden, Matt Berry. It is college football at Bryant-Denny Stadium on a Saturday. And Nick Saban will tell you it is time to get in some work. Let's check in with Chris Budden for the first time. Good afternoon, Chris.
Good afternoon. We do have some high stakes today because winner gets a reward. The winning team gets a steak dinner. Losing team gets hot dogs and beans, which you see a lot in spring games. But more so than that, it's about bragging rights. And this started a couple months ago. Ty Simpson, he will see a quarterback today, second, third string. When he got to campus in January, he had the task of being scout team quarterback for the national championship game. And he joked, he said, I hope Will Anderson takes it easy on me. Well, Anderson told the media, don't worry. I went up to him. I told him, you don't have to worry about me hitting you right now, but just know, in springtime, you're going to see me all the time. I'm going to be in your face. You ain't got to worry about me now. He might need to today.
Yeah, the one time where you get to go against your teammates in a game-like setting. Cannot wait to see Will Anderson Jr. play this afternoon, just to see some of the workout he's been putting into the winter to put on some weight. That is Jahmyr Gibbs. He is back. And again, they will be running simulations throughout practice. Jahmyr Gibbs comes over from Georgia Tech. And everything we've heard about him, his spring has been electric. They are excited to have him a part of this ball club. So, Stitch, here comes Bryce Young. What a luxury for Bill O'Brien and this unit to have the Heisman Trophy winner back to break in a new set of receivers.
Yeah, I mean, not only year 2 for Bill O'Brien with this roster, but to have the utility of the most explosive offensive playmaker from a season ago, arguably the best offensive player. And boy, they rave about his countenance, his approach to the game, his poise, beyond just the physical skill set that he has.
Young's going to throw it right away on first down. We're going to be calling his name a lot this season and today. That is Jermaine Burton, gain of 22. He comes over from Georgia. So Nick Saban very active in the transfer portal. Right away, Stitch, Burton making an impact. They count on him to be the #1 guy this fall.
Well, you consider the departures that they had at wide receiver with Mechie, Jamison Williams, even Slade Bolden in the slot. They had holes to fill.
He takes another shot deep at Burton's. You can tell right away, covered on the play by Kyrie Jackson. Jamison Williams, he's going to be a first-round pick. Mechie, you mentioned him. Slade Bolden. This is always one of those programs, Stitch, that they don't rebuild, they reload. And when you can bring in a guy like Jermaine Burton, what a gift that is for Young and the rest of this offense to have some of his ability.
Yeah, no question. And, you know, they had a few departures from that wide receiver room. And so the fact that you can attract talent from others, wow. So what do we say coming in, right? 2 of the biggest playmakers in college football. So you got Bryce Young, mishandles the snap from center, and Will Anderson is there to cover it up. So you get a completion to Jermaine Burton, a transfer, and then your Nagurski winning outside linebacker recovers a fumble from your Heisman Trophy winner. Not many schools can say that.
Looked like some miscommunication there. Trace Sanders was in the backfield again. We expect to see a lot of Jahmyr Gibbs today. And then the all-everything Will Anderson is Bill O'Brien not happy with the offensive exchange there. It's one of those games. The spring games are always unique because you're inevitably going to have one coach, one unit that's going to be unhappy. You'll have the other one that's going to be happy with the execution. And Jalen Milroe, the second-year guy, the second-team quarterback, he has had a remarkable spring in that he's taken that next step, and since the coaches love his development and what this kid can bring to the table.
It really was interesting talking with him, Matt, where they were saying, look, we've kind of forced him to kind of bottle up the athleticism that we know he brings to the table, not dissimilar to from a Jalen Hurts, because they want him to be able to operate seamlessly in this offense. Were they to have to insert him, Bryce Young, something happens, next thing you know, you got to go in there, and offensively, they don't want to have this distinct departure of who they want to be offensively. They know that he can be an athlete and make plays with his legs. They love his arm strength and his progression in the passing game, but they've kind of forced him to kind of accentuate that element of his game.
So that was 3rd and short. Again, this is a game type simulation for these spring games. You see 4th and short. Now they'll run the package they normally would on a 4th and short in a game. And you talk about looking the part. Milroe looks every bit of the part of an SEC quarterback.
Oh, yeah. He's big and pretty. There's no doubt. And they've got a lot of talent at that position as well. But they made no bones about it. Bill O'Brien especially said, look, right now, this guy is our number 2. We expect to see a lot of him as they try to develop him throughout this offense and their approach.
So a 4th down for the white team. They're going to convert. That's Jamarian Miller, early enrollee freshman, who's been very active on this drive. Malachi Moore forces him out. So let's get into some of the basics of a spring game from a player's perspective. Look, you want to win. You're competing against your teammates. As Chris said before, you get beans and weenies if you lose, a steak if you win. Besides that, you've got to get in work, because the next time we go to camp is when it counts in the fall.
Yeah, this is kind of where you can establish a pecking order, right? And the coaches can get an idea of, so where are we going to start camp out? How are we going to allocate these reps? That's what's lost a lot of times, especially you talk about teams with multiple quarterbacks or questions at that position. There's only so many reps to go around. And this spring practice, Matt, they were somewhat abbreviated, or at least hindered a little bit, because they only had about 12 offensive line guys to work with. And so that limits what you can do. They try to run 2 different fields at the same time. There's only so many big boys up front. Doesn't matter how many skill position players you have if you don't have those 5 that can block to run some of these scrimmages.
So 2nd and long for Milroe. He had a problem with the snap. Flicks it outside, and a good run after catch. Christian Leary forced out of bounds. The sophomore out of Orlando, Florida. And we've seen a couple of mishaps with the ball already. Yeah. Weather in the Tuscaloosa area today. They're expecting rain throughout the afternoon, but Saban's like, hey, if you think we're going to cancel this game because of the weather, I want to play in this because we could deal with this in the regular season.
Yeah, it was interesting. You know, we said we don't really do any wet ball drills. I mean, literally, when you prepare in the season, they'll take a football, dunk it, submerge it completely in a bucket of water just so that that center quarterback exchange, receivers have to handle a slick, wet football.
Milroe forced out of the pocket. Again, he's a black jersey, so he cannot be hit. He'll be tagged there by 34, Quandarius Robinson, after a gain of 2. You know, he came out of high school as a pro-style quarterback, but anybody you talk to that's been following Alabama through the spring, you just saw it there. Milroe's ability to run and use his feet. And
you could just see Coach Saban, he's out here coaching. You know, he's not out here just to observe. He's out there coaching up the contained defense. Can't allow your quarterback to leak. It was a nice pass rush inside by Tim Keenan to force Milroe out of the pocket.
So here's 2nd down. Milroe over the middle. Good pass and catch there. It's Leary again. So it would appear Milroe and Leary have a little bit of chemistry working here for the white team as they move the chains. Now 1st and goal for white after the Bryce Young-led Crimson team turned it over on their first possession.
Yeah, 4th down conversion, right? Roll the dice plus territory if we're going to pretend like game situations matter.
Stance, red meat's on the line.
That's right.
We're playing for red meat. Milroe's going to, what a cut by Milroe. So you heard some oohs and ahs from the crowd. That was special. Jalen Milroe. Because it's a scrimmage. Stan, what do we got going on down there?
There's going to be some protests down here. Because obviously, he's got the black jersey on right, and Monkel Goodwine's right there. So I'm not sure, even if he didn't have the black jersey right, I don't care what jersey you're wearing. Not many guys are making that tackle.
We ought to keep track of like jersey scores. Like, would that have been a score in a game, or was that a jersey score because of the situation we have? So I think we're marking it as a touchdown, and that was a 2-point conversion. At this point, I think we don't know. They're calling their own ball plays down there. They're figuring this out.
There's a lot happening on the field right now, and I think that it's a kind of a free-flowing structure. But regardless, it looked to me like I think that's what was happening on the sidelines over here on the white side, and they're sitting there arguing that should have been a score. And of course, Crimson side's going, now wait a minute, this dude's got a different colored jersey. Even if I could have made that play, I don't think it counts.
Hey, let's talk a second about Milroe, because he's big, he can run. Is he a type of player that Bill O'Brien might look for a package at any point this year?
Well, it's interesting because Coach was talking about that. He certainly has that capability, because you look at it, a nice play on the edge. You see Coach Saban, I think the pacing right now of the offense, we wanted that play rattled out a little bit quicker. But when you look at Milroe, there's no doubt that he can contribute differently. Not to take anything away from Bryce Young and his mobility, but there's no doubt that just body type alone, Milroe, he definitely could finish runs physically.
Some about 15, 20-pound difference between Bryce and Milroe. Milroe 6'2", 212. Bryce 6'1", 195. Jack Martin's going to come on, get some kicking work in. All right, so I believe we've taken the touchdown off the board. We'll be talking about this controversy the rest of the game. 3-0 White. Back after this. We are back at A-Day. You just saw Bryce Young there over the middle to Trayshawn Holden, Matt Berry, Matt Stinscombe alongside for Alabama's annual spring game. Let's go down to Chris Budden for how these sidelines are working.
Matt, also a chance for the coaches to get some reps under their belt, and Nick Saban not pleased with the play calling on that last drive. Went over to the white team coaches. Are we going to throw the football? What was that?
Ooh, that's good. Who's presiding over that white squad? Is that Bill O'Brien, offensive coordinator? Good cut there by Sanders. Got to make some move. Yeah, Jordan Battle brings him down. It's a good point, Chris, because this is a spring game for everybody. For the players, for the coaches, for the broadcasters. Everybody's out here. Stats, everything. We're all out here getting our football feet back underneath us.
Yeah, it's true. You got some new faces in different places, and because of that, there's a little bit of growing pains, I think, and that includes even play calling, given some of the transitions we've seen on the roster, right? And right now, with what would be thought to be the one offense led by Bryce Young, new faces, both those tackle spots, and something to watch. You got a Kendall Randolph who spent a lot of time last year as the extra tight end, and they put him in there just for blocking purposes. And J.C. Latham, a guy who came up a lot at right tackle, started at right tackle earlier this spring period in the last scrimmage. They're trying to figure out answers at their tackle positions.
Here's our first look at Jahmyr Gibbs coming out of the backfield. Again, he was returning some kicks. The transfer out of Georgia Tech, Henry Toe on the tackle. And as much as an Alabama coaching staff will gush, that was third down. They couldn't convert.
Yeah.
Jahmyr Gibbs has garnered pretty rave reviews from what he's done in the early part of this spring.
Oh, man. Coach O'Brien kind of had to slam on the brakes a little bit because he's like, I don't want to say too much. He got so excited about Jahmyr Gibbs, but it is, a talent that's separate and apart from what they had last year. Brian Robinson figured pretty prominently in the passing game. Jahmyr Gibbs brings a whole nother element to that out of the backfield.
So nothing doing for the Bryce Young-led Crimson team. Still nothing on the board. Nick Saban can't be happy about that. We'll step aside for a minute. We are back at A-Day, Alabama's annual spring game. Running clock here in the first quarter. You're taking a look at Jalen Milroe, the number 2 quarterback for Alabama. And to this point, just before we came back, picked up a nice gain of 16. Matt Berry, Matt Stinkum, and Chris Budden on the call. And Stanch, I like this kid. He looks good.
Yeah, he does. I mean, we're down here right now, and if that dude's got 4% body fat, then, you know, I'm a 10-football cowboy. I mean, you're just looking at him going, man, if you could put one together. And you can tell that the coaching staff, given the amount of time talking with them, the investment that they have in him, obviously, with the other elements of his game, and you can see even early on where he's already demonstrated the ability to extend plays, which is unsurprising here today, right? We talked about the offensive front, and they're light in numbers, but he can make something happen, even with pressure in his face right there.
Look at that throw. Intercepted. Christian Story threw that off his back foot. Ball popping off his arm isn't a problem, though. He gets picked off. An ill-advised throw at that, but Christian Story, the talented sophomore out of Alabama, comes up with the interception.
And they talked a little bit about this too. Largely on the defensive side of the football, it's these quote-unquote my bad plays where they want to clean things up. You know, they had a good scrimmage and a bad scrimmage, and this is based on commentary from the staff themselves as far as their impression of the type of play that they'd gotten. So they're trying to avoid those types of plays where they're sitting there going, look, you don't get a my bad. Not when the scoreboard's lit up and the score actually counts and matters in the standings.
Young, the fake to Gibbs. Again, he'd have been hit there in a game, but they blow it dead because he's wearing the black jersey. Different rules in a spring game. That was Jamil Burrows who applied the pressure on Young. And that's a couple things we're going to watch today, Stinchcomb. We're going to watch the receivers, the chemistry, and up front of the offensive line, notably losing guys to the NFL again.
Yeah, I mean, and there have been a couple of free runners, free rushers, guys that are largely untouched. You know, that time you see Alabama move in the pocket some. And this was something that Coach Saban was kind of lamenting a little bit last year. They got a little too drop-back centric in their passing game.
So, but down as a loss of 8. JoJo Earl catches it and gets all 8 of it back. And you have to know when you're Alabama, you're going to have guys. I think it's been 13 consecutive years that a player from Alabama has gone to the first round of the NFL draft. This year's going to make it 14. You're going to do this every year. What's not typical is when you got a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback back and you've got to replace so many key pieces to what made him so great a year ago. And that includes at running back with Brian Robinson Jr. headed to the NFL. Good job by Young, setting his feet, and he's picked off. Jordan Battle, who coaches have raved about this spring, comes up with the interception. Then he coughs it up, but I believe the white team was able to fall on it. So 2 consecutive possessions. You want to see a coaching staff be unhappy. Watch both your quarterbacks throw interceptions on both sides.
Well, the targeted receiver there, tight end Cameron Latu, and one of the few known commodities, veterans on that offensive side of the football. Coach Saban was talking about that. You know, it's not just the coaching staff that returns, your play caller, just so many new faces on that side. And you could see trying to get that ball downfield, and Jordan Battle, one of the leaders on this team, had that pick 6 in the SEC championship game. Comes up with the big turnover, nearly gave it back to the Crimson.
Getting our first look at the 5-star quarterback, Ty Simpson. Dual threat player out of Tennessee. Simpson pressured out of the pocket. Nice job scrambling there. Knocked out of bounds at the 40. Probably wasn't supposed to get hit there. Kendrick Blackshire knocked him out. But Ty Simpson, he was listed as a dual threat quarterback, so he can run. He was an early enrollee. He's one of those players that can benefit from coming on campus to learn the offense. We have a running clock here in spring football, so it is the end of the first quarter. We will have a look at Ty Simpson and some of the other youngsters. White lead after 1, 3-0. Start of the second quarter. Here at Bryant-Denny, A-Day, the annual spring game for the Alabama Crimson Tide. It is the Crimson team versus the White team. We get a look at some of the better players in the country. Will Anderson Jr., Bryce Young, and we get a look at one of the highest touted recruits in the country at quarterback, Ty Simpson, now in for the White team as he hands the ball off to Jamarian Miller. But it's a trend now in college football, much more than it used to be back in the day. These early enrollees, and Matt Stinchcomb, that benefits a quarterback who we believe at some point is going to be the guy here at Alabama, but he comes in and learns. Jalen Milrose earned the 2 spot, but Simpson can come in here and start getting his college football feet wet.
No question. And they talked about that as well, how quickly he's acclimated to the offense. Obviously still, abbreviated in his familiarity and experience with it. A couple of inside handoffs. Nice hole that time, right behind right guard. But they're talking about Simpson and where he is, love his skill set, but more than anything, how he's handled himself as an early entrant to this roster. Not an easy roster to just show up and play for. We talked to Henry To'oTo'o, one of the leaders on this team, top tacklers in the conference. I said, look, you have to come in here and let your work do the talking. They've been pleased with the way Simpson has done so, and especially at a position like quarterback.
He handed it off to another early enrollee, Jamarian Miller from Tyler, Texas. This is the second-ranked recruiting class in the country behind Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M, and a great play there by Kendrick Blackshire. He's had a active afternoon for a loss of 3, but I just mentioned some of the notables from this recruiting class. Now, Shaz Preston, he's a receiver. He'll come in the summer. Isaiah Bond is another player that'll show up this summer. Kobe Prentice, one of the players they're incredibly excited about. You see him there at number 4, Emmanuel Henderson. This kid was one of the highest rated recruits in the country. You saw all those number 2s in the country, 3s in the country. They legitimately reload year in and year out. And it's a good opportunity, especially in spring ball, maybe with some injuries, to get some of these young guys for Nick Saban, get them some real-time reps.
Yeah, Coach pointed that out. He was saying that in reference largely to some of the injury woes and numbers that they've dealt with along the offensive front, but you're able to, because of maybe depth issues, get more reps, especially in the spring. These guys, you're facing some of the top talent that you're going to find in all of college football in practice, much less what you might see on a Saturday.
So Simpson moving his unit right down the field. That intended for Jonathan Bennett. He drops it. Devontae Smith. We've heard that name called here in years past. Not him, but Devontae Smith on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah. Slightly different role before. Figures pretty prominently, I think, in the Alabama mindset. So some situational football and opportunity here. Out comes the field goal unit.
It's going to be Jack Martin for 40 yards. Again, no rush in a spring game. Just trying to get some of the kicking game execution. The White team, 2 field goals. No offensive fireworks yet. Nick Saban coaching them up here on A-Day. Matt Berry, Matt Stinchcomb, Chris Budden back with you. A-Day here at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Alabama noted for bringing in some of the top high school talent in the country, but look what they've done via the portal. Jermaine Burton wins a national championship at Georgia, beats Alabama, joins the Tide. Jahmyr Gibbs, Georgia Tech, a player that they've raved about this spring. And then Eli Ricks, talented defensive back out of LSU. They got 2 SEC players and a kid from the south of Georgia Tech as Trey Sanders gets the handoff. And the frightening thing for college football is you have a look at Gibbs there. The frightening thing for the sport, Stitch, is that Nick Saban can get any high school player that he wants. It appears now they added Tyler Steen from Vandy this week. He could add anybody he wants out of the transfer portal now if he can go grab a Georgia player and an LSU player.
Isn't it true? I mean, you could take historically the most proven high school football players, and a glut of them will end up here in Tuscaloosa. But the ones that don't, or even the ones that maybe develop into even better players, they can end up here in Tuscaloosa anyway for Alabama. And that's ultimately what they've been able to do. Not a lot of quantity in these transfers, but really high quality guys that they're bringing in at positions of need. You hit on it. You got some holes at receiver. How about bringing in one of the top receivers in the conference, especially considering the type of offense that he was coming out of in Jermaine Burton? Plug a hole at wide receiver. Plug a hole at running back.
So Trey Sanders dropped the ball. That got him out of the game. Jahmyr Gibbs, who we were just talking about a second ago, now in third down. They love his ability out of the backfield as a receiver. Young steps up. He's pressured again. And it's Jamil Burroughs again. And we're going to dive into this because this offensive line is having some issues early on. And this is one of those areas, Matt, that they need to get shored up going into camp.
And it's going to be really difficult. You know, you got a guy in there at right guard, Damian George. Tried him at tackle. Huge body. I mean, looks the part and certainly can play it. They've got him slid inside at right guard. And they've kind of had to play musical chairs with the big boys up front. Not a ton of opportunity for continuity. And you've seen that here early, especially on some of the passing downs where the protection has broken down. It's not just the individual talent, but how they're able to work in concert with one another. As you mentioned, Burroughs a couple of times in the offensive backfield.
And Saban, during our conversation with him yesterday, Bill O'Brien, same thing as Kool-Aid McKinstry back to receive the punt. They said, look, we're trying any combination we can to get different guys looks. I mean, these are all highly touted offensive linemen. Latham was one of the highest recruited players in the country. But they've got to find the right chemistry to plug into the offensive line. Just like, Chris, when you bring in transfers, you got to find the guys that are going to fit what you've already established as a program.
And for Bryce Young to have established this role of a leadership going through one full season, it was one of the things that he prided himself on. He's not your rah-rah guy, but, you know, he learned under Mac Jones how to be a leader. And he said, you know, that was extremely helpful in my development. And he's now taken that. He was talking with Jermaine Burton, going through some plays. And he's really taken a lot of pride in the ability this year to be more of a leader. And one thing that Nick Saban had told us, it's also the ability to realize the play of everyone around you, not just you and your position group. You are also responsible for making level of play from your special guy, from everyone else, your offensive line, to be at your level as well.
Kendrick Law over the middle. He's another early enrollee. Is Milroe going to take a shot downfield? What a throw. What a catch. Christian Leary, touchdown White. 52 yards, Milroe to Leary. Those two have hooked up a handful of times this afternoon. Malachi Moore beat on the coverage. Jalen Milroe, he's putting on a show for the home fans here at Bryant-Denny. Matt Stinchcomb, what a throw here to Leary.
That was a beauty, wasn't it? Dropped it right in there. Now the question would be, of course, if we're playing live, I'm not sure Jalen Milroe gets that throw off. Certainly not from his original platform.
Boo.
I'm just letting you know, I'm the last guy to point out a protection breakdown, but I promise you that the other sideline's going, hey, wait a minute. I think we got the quarterback on the ground.
Here's what we're going to do. When we come back, we're going to give you another look at Milroe to Leary. We're going to study this play. You know what? Stitch might be right. That's the last time I'll admit it. Either way, we got fireworks and a touchdown. It is all White. They're playing for stake, and they're up 13-0. The big strike from the sophomore Christian Leary to give his White team a 13-0 lead over the Bryce Young-led Crimson team. So you heard Matt Stinchcomb say if this wasn't a scrimmage, would this have been a touchdown? You don't think Milroe gets it off?
I think I think he gets it off. We've already talked about it. The guy's mobile is all get out, right? I don't know if he gets sacked. The difficulty is he didn't get that ball off in time. I'm not sure that he's able to throw off of that platform. He would have to have adjusted in the pocket. They did a great job winning on an inside spin move that time. And Darius Robinson, we've seen a couple of individual efforts from a pass rush standpoint get home were it not for the aforementioned black jersey.
I mentioned, too, that it is a running clock, so the halves will go quick as that's Gibbs on the inside handoff from Bryce Young. And that's the first time we've seen a big play from the Georgia Tech transfer, Jahmyr Gibbs. Chris?
I covered Gibbs several times when he was at Georgia Tech a year ago, and everyone raves about him. And already the enthusiastic Alabama fan base is making comparisons to him and Alvin Kamara with the Saints, which is interesting because when I talked with Gibbs last year, he will get film of Kamara every Sunday, break down his plays. It's someone that he wants to model his game after. Bill O'Brien's like, whoa, back up here. We don't want to put too much pressure on the guy when he just steps foot in Tuscaloosa.
3rd and 2 now. Bryce Young in this offense hasn't been able to get going. There he is, Gibbs. You see that ability. Good 3rd down back. He could be in every down back. And Chris, with Bill O'Brien and the hype that's been around the Gibbs transfer, the one comparison I know they like to make with this kid here in Tuscaloosa is his ability out of the backfield to catch the football, to be a receiver out of the backfield. And if you can add that element, Stinch, to this offense with a guy that's like a receiver coming out of the backfield, you've got a whole other complement of ball plays you can call just because of it.
No doubt. It changes things, right? You think about Brian Robinson last year, huge in pass protection and caught 35 passes for the Crimson Tide out of the backfield, but a different playmaker with the ball in his hands. Well, the past couple of plays prior to that play action, you got Jahmyr Gibbs on a draw. He kind of hides behind the blockers and then squirts through for a conversion. Then you get a short yardage run, and he gets behind his pads and finishes it pretty physically. He's a 200-pound back.
Yeah.
So he's a guy that once he gets that ball in his hands, either by a handoff or catching it out of the backfield, he can make plays. They talked about his playmaking ability in the 2nd and 3rd levels, run away from tacklers, but physical enough to run through would-be arm tackles around the line of scrimmage.
Gives you an indication of how valuable some of these transfer portal guys are to Alabama. The last 2 plays, Gibbs and Burton. Pass over the middle to Burton, the Georgia transfer, and then a run from Gibbs. So they're going to rely heavily on these newcomers. As Bryce Young forced out of the pocket. He can run as well, as mobile as Milroe. Some early movement there on the defensive fronts. Will Anderson was perhaps getting a little excited to go get one of his guys.
Yeah.
Got flagged and a nice run to move the chains for Bryce Young.
Well, I'll tell you guys, spring game, so I'm down here field level right behind the quarterback. And Will Anderson's get off, you hear about how elite it is. He's quick off that football. His first step is lightning fast. Kendall Randolph did a good job of recovering just enough to keep him off. And then the hand swipe.
Again.
That's just, the difficulty you have. And he's so long. That's the other part, I think, that might be underappreciated. He's a long lever guy, meaning he's got that long upper body, and he uses his length so well. I want to see, I don't know how long those arms are, because it's almost unfair. With a great get off and the ability to swipe hands quickly, you can get on top of a quarterback almost immediately, like he did on that previous rep. Physical in the run game. I mean, it's really a pretty complete football player coming off the edge.
It is frightening that he was a sophomore last year.
Yeah.
And this is anybody you talk to in the NFL, he's the handoff to Gibbs. He would have been the #1 overall pick this year in 2 weeks. Anyone you talk to said this guy was the most talented player in college football. Bill O'Brien told us yesterday, in his time in the NFL, and now Will Anderson's one of the best football players he's just ever been around, period.
Yeah, nobody's going to argue with that assertion, that's for sure. I mean, you look at some of these guys, and you have to wonder, like, who do you see in the college football landscape that can handle 31? And that's at tackle. And they're going to move him around. They stunt him inside. They'll line him up over guards. He had a lot of success in the national championship game, lining up inside versus guards who just aren't used to that athleticism. They can get to the quarterback again.
Yeah, and you're standing right there. You see Will Anderson cannot be blocked. Bryce Young, 4th sack today for Young's unit. But, I mean, you're looking at the replay here. I mean, you've got no chance of blocking this person.
I got to tell you, man, I'm going to get PTSD standing down here this close to this stuff. I'm going to boil a mouthpiece and hope it works out. He plays with enough power. Watch him on film. He doesn't do a lot. He doesn't need to. He doesn't have this full bag of tricks because he's so quick off the ball and physical at the point of contact. That time, not a bad set from Randolph at left tackle, just not enough power to anchor late, and he runs right through the block.
But when you think about it, too, and if you're Nick Saban and you're Bill O'Brien, what a blessing it is for your offensive line to be able to go up against a guy like Will Anderson. Because remember, on Saturdays in the fall, he's with you, not against you. So here's the practice. White up 13-0.
Auto Owners insures your car. Because sometimes something from out of left field can literally come from out of left field. That's simple human sense. Ask your independent agent if Auto Owners makes sense for you.
At Boll & Branch, we don't make bedding like everyone else. We make it better. We prioritize thread quality, not thread count. We source the finest 100% organic cotton to make the softest, most luxurious fabrics on earth. We're free from toxins, the way home should be. Boll & Branch is made different, so you can sleep better at night. Experience the difference at bollandbranch.com.
Larry, check this out. With On Deck, we could get a small business loan fast and start hiring more help right away.
Or Loan Cannon!
Why, Loan Cannon, why?
There's a better way to get a fast small business loan. On Deck, the online lender that makes it easy to choose your loan and, if approved, get funds as soon as the same day. Your loan is on deck.
It's time! Presenting the Lawnmower 4.0! Featuring skin-safe technology, a powerful 7,000 RPM motor, and it's waterproof!
Security outboard.
Go to manscaped.com and order your Lawnmower 4.0 today.
We continue our coverage of the A-Day game, Crimson versus White, and we are breaking down the Alabama roster coming into the season, and that pass nearly caught by early enrollee Kendrick Law from early enrollee quarterback Ty Simpson. Got a flag on the play. Matt Berry, Matt Stinskin, Chris Budden with you. So we've taken a look at some of the transfers. We've detailed Jahmyr Gibbs, what he brings to the table. Same for Jermaine Burton.
Pass interference on the defense, number 12. 15-yard penalty from the previous spot. First down.
Officials, spring training for them as well. Let's focus now. Let's take a look at the play again. That'd have been a touchdown had not Law been held up. Let's focus now, Matt, on Eli Ricks, number 7, the transfer from LSU. This is probably, we talked to Pete Golden yesterday, like if you had to go into the summer with one position you're just still uneasy about, he said the corners, and that's where Eli Ricks comes in, number 7.
Yeah, well, that's where you can lose a game with one bad play, right? Guy that just has to be off as you see another pressure inside. You know, what's interesting is that, you know, defensive coordinator Pete Golding was talking about Henry To'oTo'o, how he came into this team and this defensive system. He was familiar with it already. The terminology, the verbiage that they used, the structure itself was all familiar. So that kind of accelerated his ability to kind of plug and play. Eli Ricks, it's definitely not a talent issue, but he has to get used to the type of defense that they're playing here at Alabama, but also, you know, how they get into and out of them. There's a lot of communication that happens post-snap, and one that he has to get used to.
You see the zip there on Simpson's ball. Good catch there by Tyu Jones-Bell. Gain of 20. Here's what it is, and that you talk about the transfer portal in a nutshell, Stinch. Eli comes in, he goes, okay, you guys call it here, this at Alabama. We called it this at LSU. And so you've got to familiarize yourself with speaking Alabama language, and that is where it's different than when you bring in a high school recruit, because they don't know any better. They're coming here as true freshmen, as early enrollees, as high school players. Right. They're coming in, that's how they learn. But these other players have been raised by someone else, and now they come into a new home and have to learn the rules of how everything's done here in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, you almost have to unlearn some things, right? Because, okay, this is a somewhat familiar concept. We called it this. Now I got to translate after it gets called in-game.
Ty Simpson, he can run. Look, you look at a room. Every time you look at a quarterback room at Alabama, there seems to be an NFL player or a Heisman player. You look at the running back room. They've got a bunch of those. But I'll tell you, between Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson, we know what Bryce Young can do, but the future quarterback room here looks pretty good.
Yeah, I don't know that you'll often say, you know, there's the cupboard's bare. And even if it is, as we pointed out, just go grab somebody. But to me, you see it like here, situational football, Coach Saban in there pushing for an end-of-half type sequence.
Right.
Several times, even in the first half. This is outside of end-of-half sequences where he's talking tempo. He wants to pick up the pace of the plays as they come in. And here an opportunity for Simpson to try to close out a drive right here as we kind of get close to half.
So in one of the rules here of the annual spring game, the last 4 minutes of each half will be 2-minute must-try-to-score scenarios for Nick Saban and Alabama. You see him talking with a lot of his staff down there. They want to move the start. There's a lot of urgency in it, and I'll tell you why, because the weather does not look great in Alabama, the Tuscaloosa area, so there's been a lot of emphasis to keep this thing moving along with the running quarters to get them into the half before another storm rolls in. So 2nd and 2 now, 13-0. The White beating the Bryce Young Crimson-led team. Simpson, the true freshman, early enrollee, instead of going to high school prom, he's going to an A-Day game. All right, so I mentioned the weather there a second ago. I'm going to show you the radar. Here's what's coming to Tuscaloosa. And his operations people tell Coach Saban, like, hey, we're in the path of what looks like some pretty gnarly weather coming in. It's just to the west of us. And so they want to do anything they can to get this half of football in before the weather blows in. Maybe it blows through during the 12-minute halftime.
We see Coach. He didn't even have his raincoat on. He's not worried about it. Coaching ball here in the red zone.
Another good strike out of Simpson. That's Taiu Jones-Bell. We've seen a lot of the young guys. Simpson, true freshman. Aaron Anderson, early enrollee, 82. Kendrick Law, 83, early enrollee. What a great thing for them to play some college football and get some reps so young in their career.
Yeah, and out here in this environment, all the coaches universally talked about that in practice, but what is it going to look like when you get in here? It's a big stadium. This is an imposing stadium. They don't build them like this at the high school level. I don't care where you went. So what are these guys going to do when there's a few fans in the stands? That can be a distraction. How focused can you be? Aaron Anderson made a nice juggling catch earlier.
Simpson looks towards the end zone, and again, it's Kendrick Law trying to make a man miss. Came back for that ball, probably cost him the first down. Anquan Barnes. It's the quarterback pressured. You look at it, he came back to it. Wasn't able to move the chains. So now 3rd and 2. As the clock ticks to 30 seconds here in the half, you see Saban. Incomplete. I'll tell you, and Matt, you've got a good vantage point. I'm having a good time watching Saban down here. I mean, he's in the middle of the huddle right now. He is just losing his mind, and I love it. Always coaching.
There have been a couple of times where I'm like, I'm going to grab him real quick and ask him. Nope, he's got to coach some guy up. I mean, it's constant. And you could see there, that was an alignment issue right there on the edge. Looked like he was talking to Kennedy. And he tried to get that adjustment. Ball ends up getting snapped. And these are the reps they're talking about. You get an opportunity here in a spring game. You don't want the mistakes. Far rather want to coach him here. And he gets to do it real time on the field. You're 10 yards away from a correction.
He's talked about it numerous times during spring football. The leadership of this team, the want-to of this team, the attitude of this team. It sounds like he believes in terms of a leadership and mindset perspective, they're ahead of where they were last year. But you come away with a bad A-Day performance or sloppiness, that almost throws out all the goodwill you built up during the spring heading into fall camp, because he can go onto this tape, Matt, and say, slow your roll. We've got a lot of work to do.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, this is, you talk about momentum. You know, you're going to work out in the summer and the like, but this is film, and that film lives forever. And they're going to have a point of reference, things you did well, things maybe you did poorly, justify maybe the way summer camp starts out. And we already touched on, you know, with depth and new faces, if there's indecision as far as who's going to be where, you want to be in line with the opportunity to get the most reps you possibly can.
So you just saw a second ago, Bill O'Brien. I mean, they're going to send Bryce Young out there, 23 seconds left. They're going to want him to move this offense, and he hasn't been particularly sharp this afternoon. 5 of 8, 62 yards, and they've got nothing to show for it on the scoreboard. So we mentioned the coaching in this game. Yes, you have a Heisman Trophy on your mantle, and you won the SEC, and you were in the national championship. This is the first program that'll tell you anything, all your bona fides from a year ago, they mean nothing when we start the new season.
That's true. This is a great opportunity, as you mentioned, for Bryce Young, who I don't know if you could have acquitted yourself any better than he did a season ago. It was the eye of the storm for many games. Leaned heavily on a very talented wide receiving core and passing game, and he held up. But he can't block everybody. And you see Dallas Turner there again, Matt, able to almost get home for Bryce Young.
Dallas Turner was a talented freshman a year ago. He's now a sophomore at St. Thomas Aquinas in the Fort Lauderdale area as the Crimson team bangs their first timeout. Trying to get something going because the offensive line, it's going to be a story from now until we start the season. You got to feel good going into summer workouts that you can find a combination. And right now, it just hadn't been there, but they've got to block the likes of Turner, Toto, Will Anderson. Young misfires there, intended for Burton.
It's actually a good-looking pocket, one of the few on a true drop back that we've seen. And as mentioned, look, you're going against the top pass rushing duo that you're going to find in college football. These guys combined for 26 sacks last year. And Dallas Turner, as a true freshman, he's still figuring things out. On opposite, Will Anderson Jr., where are you going to slide your protection? Who are you going to help? You help one guy, and you're going to likely lose against the other. So this offensive front, especially with the new faces at tackle, this is the baptismal fire.
There's Latu over the middle. First time he's caught one. He's had a couple of passes intended for him, but Latu able to move the chains for a first down. So 5 seconds left. You bring up Dallas Turner. I mean, this coaching staff last year, when we were at the national championship game, just kind of talking to some of the staff members about what they think of Dallas Turner when he was a freshman. I mean, this kid's going to be an NFL player. I mean, they just keep coming up. And that's after you bring Will Anderson in there, and that's who he's replacing right now off that edge. I mean, it can just be scary what they do. So final play of the half, over the middle, dropped by JoJo Earl. So it is 16-0 White. We have reached half. Nick Saban doesn't appear to be happy with what he saw in the first half, and our Chris Budd's going to catch up with Nick Saban. Let's go down to Chris.
Coach, what did you see out of your offense so far?
Well, the second offense is doing a nice job. The first defense has really good rushers. So, with 2 starters out in the offensive line, they're having trouble giving Bryce time. When he's got time, he's done very well. But that's really been the difference in the game so far, that and a couple turnovers.
You got one more half of spring left. What would you like to see more of?
Well, I'd just like to see a little more consistency in performance. Not so many negative plays, not have turnovers, not get sacked, and be able to execute a little bit better.
Thank you, Coach.
All right, thank you.
As you heard Nick Saban talk about it, he mentioned some of the depth issues on the offensive line. There are some injuries, but there is some hope with youth, namely Jalen Milroe. He mentioned the number 2 offense. They've looked good. Will Anderson's lived up to his advanced billing. We are coaching them up at the A-Day game. The White team up 16-0 at the half. Back here in Tuscaloosa, what a special moment today, a ceremony honoring Wilbur Jackson and John Mitchell. Wilbur Jackson, the first African-American scholarship student athlete on the Crimson Tide football team back in 1970, earned all SEC and All-American honors. And John Mitchell transferred to Alabama from Eastern Arizona Junior College, a 2-time All-SEC and All-American selection back in 1972, became an assistant coach the great Bear Bryant. So a special moment today, both of these men being honored. John Mitchell and Wilbur Jackson forever remembered here in Crimson Tide history, becoming the first African-American scholarship student athletes in Alabama. It's a program that steeps in tradition and talent. You can't talk about it without Jackson and John Mitchell. Second half from the A-Day game coming up when we come back. You see Jalen Milroe there, the backup quarterback, but the starting quarterback for the white team. They started the second half quickly, 16-0. That Barry, Matt Stinchcomb, and Chris Budden on the call here of the annual A-Day game. And Stinch, as they're moving this half going, I'd like to get your opinion of what you saw in the first half. Here's Stinch. I think he's down there with Saban, having a conversation with him. And he took his ears out. TV 101. Keep your IFB in. Shot over the middle by Milroe. Great job knocking that pass up by Malachi Moore.
All right, guys, so we're down here with the head coach, and we're talking protection schemes, and I'm wondering, what is the answer for a pass rusher like a number 31 when you're trying to break in new faces at tackle?
Yeah, I think, the big difference in the game right now is we don't have a left tackle that can block 31, and we don't really have a lot of protection stuff in to really remedy that. We got to put a tight end there or something so the guy just can't tee off on the guy. So it's affecting Bryce a little bit, who when he's had time, he's made really good throws and played well, but too many occasions where he doesn't have time.
Is it a fair observation? Is there a college football tackle that can block number 31?
I'm sure there is somewhere, but he's a pretty good rusher, and I'm glad he's on our team.
Of his skill set, we talked about this a little bit. You want him running downhill, but what about opposite him and Dallas Turner and his ability to challenge offenses from a protection standpoint?
Well, we feel like we have three really good rushers. 41's a good rusher too. So now we're not playing them all together today, but we will have a way to do that, no doubt, because there's just too much speed, too many guys that can rush. So we've done pretty well this spring with those three guys in the game.
How about Jahmyr Gibbs, a guy that y'all been impressed with so far, new entrant to the roster here, and his ability, not only as a return man, had a nice return earlier, but the playmaking ability he has out of the backfield.
Well, I think he's an outstanding back, and we're so pleased and happy to have him because he gives us a little dimension of speed and quickness, but he's really instinctive as a runner. He presses the hole, and then he's got a great burst when he gets the defense to commit, to hit the hole. He helps the offensive lineman. He sets up their blocks really well. I'm really excited about having him on our team.
Got Aaron Anderson, a new entrant here too, got here early. You had a chance to kind of coach him up at the end of half, I guess is what we'll call it. What was your observations to him real time?
Well, I think it's situational football. There's 26 seconds to go in the half. We got 3 timeouts. We don't want to catch a kickoff return, 5 yards deep in the end zone and bring it out and take time off the clock when we'd possibly be able to, create enough time to hit a big play and maybe kick a field goal.
Will we get to see, are we going to play the rest of these halves? We'll get to see our starters still, Bryce Young, Will Anderson. Are they going to continue in this game today?
I don't know. Maybe we won't play Will as much in the second half. So maybe that would make it a little fair for the offense and give us a chance, because it's really important that we're able to evaluate all the players. One of the things we want to do is see how guys compete. So you don't really have one guy that can really impact the game where you don't get a chance to compete the way you want. So.
Nice catch in traffic there. All right, we don't want to, as you're nearing the red zone, we'll try to wrap it. As far as Eli Ricks, you've seen him out here with the second team, got some reps in there. A big, long athlete. How is he acclimated to the type of defense and the way that y'all call your defenses here?
Well, I think that's been the biggest thing for him. For a guy that's a starter in another place, he tries to interpolate everything, to what they called it where he played before. So that's really been probably the biggest transition for him. But we have 3 guys that are all competing, and he's one of them for starting corner positions. We put guys on teams today, so we're sure that we get reps. If we put all the guys and let them roll, they don't get as many reps.
Understood. Yep. Well, I'll tell you what, I might have 1 rep in me versus Anderson. I'll line up in there and try to crawl into the fetal position, see if I can survive.
We'll put you in.
Thanks, Coach. I think it was more of a threat than an opportunity.
It exactly was. You know what that was? It was like, dude, you've taken enough of my time in this interview. I will throw you in with Will Anderson right now.
That's exactly right. No thanks. Talk about, I feel like the GOAT in Jurassic Park.
You know what my favorite part of that interview was? Well done on the GOAT in Jurassic Park reference, by the way. I don't want to let that slide for the viewer. That's nowhere over the middle, incomplete. Matt Stinchcomb, what he just admitted as we show you the best of Will Anderson from today, he just admitted we've got a guy that's unstoppable, so we have to take him out of the game so the rest of our guys can get some real-time reps.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about one of the premier programs, the premier program, elite recruiting operation here, and he's going, we don't have a guy that can block 31. Well, that's a de facto way of saying at the collegiate level, they don't have a guy that can block 31. And that is, not to read too far between the lines, a problem for opposing offenses.
Yeah, because best bet is that if Alabama doesn't have someone on their roster that can't do it,
yeah,
what makes you think someone else anywhere across the country? And I know, look, there's Georgia, really good program, national championship program last year. LSU can recruit as good as anybody. There are a lot of programs that get top flight talent, and Alabama's at the top of that list. And if they can't block him, who can? Is Will Reichert on to attempt a 40-yard field goal. You know, Crimson finally gets on the board. Could it be all stake? We'll find out. (19-0) White. It was a mistake prior to the break that Crimson's still getting shut out. So White is feeling pretty good about themselves. Bryce Young leading the Crimson team hadn't been able to put up any points to this point. 19-0 here. Midway through the third quarter, it's a running clock. It's the annual A-Day game, the end of spring preparation for Alabama. Matt Berry, Matt Stinchcomb, and Chris Budden back with you. That's Jahmyr Gibbs. There goes Gibbs. The Georgia Tech transfer. Touchdown, Crimson. 75 yards for Jahmyr Gibbs. Kind of waited to see him break out based on what we heard coming out of camp this spring, and there you have it. That's what they have in this running back, Matt Stinchcomb.
Nice inside run, right? And see the way he just exploded through the hole there. I just got done talking about, hey, man, you might not be able to pass protect, hold up in protection, so just don't do it anymore. How about just run the football right up the middle? And that's the gear that Jahmyr Gibbs had that they've been talking about. But once he gets loose, you're going to be hard-pressed to catch him. It's part of the reason why he was the #1 all-purpose yardage generator for the entire conference when he was at Georgia Tech. He was a great return man for a reason.
And just as a running back last year, 143 carries, 745 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Out of the backfield, 36 receptions, 470 yards, and 2 touchdowns. You add that element to the kick return game, you legitimately have a triple threat that you can move into this offense that's never has a shortage of talent. Bill O'Brien, he loves the fact that you lose a player to the NFL, and Brian Robinson Jr. Trey Sanders is a talented player. Chase McClellan, a highly recruited player. These guys have been battling injuries. Roydale Williams, that doesn't even count Emmanuel Henderson, the 5-star who's on his way. You talk about a room, that running back room, year in and year out, loaded. So this half will probably go pretty quick with the running clock rules here at the spring game. As we mentioned earlier, inclement weather is in the area. They moved through halftime pretty quick, scheduled for 12 minutes. They got through it, I think, in about 5. So Crimson able to get on the board, 19-7. Let's kick it down to the sidelines and Chris Budd.
Matt, some notable alumni here on the sidelines, and I'm joined with former cornerback, now with the Denver Broncos, Patrick Surtain. Before we start talking about your defense, we were sitting here as Jahmyr Gibbs just ran 80 yards down the field. What have you seen out of the new running back for your team?
I've heard pretty good things about him. I heard he's a very elusive back. That's liable to make big time plays like we just seen just then. So it's a great addition for the team.
Restock and reload down here in Tuscaloosa. What have you seen out of today and out of the secondary primarily?
Secondary, good, of course. You know, they gonna keep guys in check, of course, flying around to the ball. I think the defense in total is going to be even dominant this year.
As someone who's played in these spring games, what's the smack talk like? You know, winners get steaks, losers gets weenie and beans, but is it much more than that?
I think it's much more than that because, you know, nobody want to eat beans. Everybody want the steaks. So, you know, they competing out here making sure that that doesn't happen. So,
What kind of smack talk would you be giving Bryce Young right now?
Sure, I was just telling him to throw my way. I'm getting all the pieces I can, lock it down my side. But, nah, man, just competing at the end of the day. So.
Before I let you go, how's life in the NFL?
Life is great so far. It was a cool little adjustment, you know, just rookie year, going through that transition. You know, just looking forward to bigger and better things.
I appreciate the time. Enjoy the rest of the day. And the poncho might be necessary here soon. I appreciate it, Patrick.
Thank you.
Guys.
Chris, good stuff. It's always, you walk down that sideline. I mean, any Alabama regular season game, but especially in the spring games, see Patrick Surtain down there. Jonathan Allen is also here. So many former players that have built this Alabama dynasty, and you're looking at another group of young players that look to be the next in line to continue the dynasty. I know Will Anderson gets a lot of the credit for being the best player in college football. Henry To'o, he's going to be on his way to the NFL. Could have gone to the NFL this year. Why'd you come back? Well, I want the ring. So he's going to be playing, wants to play for the national championship. And then we talked about Dallas Turner, some of these defensive stars that are going to be the next in line here in Tuscaloosa.
You know, in talking with Patrick Surtain and the defensive secondary, you know, even last year where they had some question marks maybe coming out of the backfield, defensive backfield, and a good way to erase some of those concerns, affect the passer. And boy, they've done that as well as any unit has, certainly last year, and they'll only build on it again this year.
So Christian Leary's had a nice day with Jalen Milroe at quarterback, unable to hang on to it there. That was 3rd and 30, now 4th and 30. Leary, 5 catches, 106 yards, and the touchdown. Who will be the one to step up? This offensive receiver room. Jermaine Burton has had a nice afternoon. Ja'Cory Brooks, he had a touchdown versus Auburn, the tying touchdown that sent that thing into one of the classics. He's been out this spring, so we haven't seen him today. Of course, everybody knows the story of Jai Hall into the transfer portal. He was a star in this game a year ago. So from his own end zone, Jermaine Burton back to receive the punt. It's a tag situation in special teams here in the spring game. So Bryce Young, they're coming off a touchdown their last possession, 19-7. Could he get a comeback and steal the red meat away from the white? Find out. You see Bryce Young there, throw to the sideline, incomplete, intended for JoJo Earl. Running clock here is the rain starting to come down in Tuscaloosa. Bryce Young, 7-13, 77 yards and a touchdown. You heard Nick Saban talk about 2 offensive linemen are out with an injury, having to contend with Will Anderson when he's not dealing with all of that. He's been happy with the performance out of his Heisman Trophy winning quarterback today. But certainly with this weather, you don't want any slips or injuries or anything of that nature, especially with a player of Bryce's caliber.
A couple new faces in there now. Left tackle Tommy Brockermeyer. Pretty clean rep that time from a protection standpoint. That ball a little bit high. Wonder if with the rain cranking up again, if it affected his release. And you saw earlier JoJo Earl, the guy that last year they were really counting on, never really quite clicked from a production standpoint. A couple of drops, and then was late to come out on a special teams rep. Opportunity for improvement, certainly some coaching opportunities.
And you saw there, it Burton was looking one way, Jermaine Burton, the Georgia transfer, the ball came out the other. So this is the time to get that in. They can watch that play on film, discuss what one saw, the communication breakdown. And that's all going to be a part of the installation of this stint with all these new players coming in.
Yeah, that was one of the things Bryce Young talked about was their kind of correspondence early on. Burton gets in here. He's not new to the league. He's been a productive player. He's got great body control. Could easily slide in as perhaps the top receiving target in this offense. But you got to have that rapport with your quarterback. And certainly that's got to have been a big reason why Jermaine Burton is wearing a Crimson Tide jersey, is to play opposite a great quarterback like Bryce Young. And you wonder, how quickly they can develop that. It seemed early on in this game they were intentional in trying to get him some touches and looks. But as you mentioned, there's going to be a couple of times, especially early on in the early going, in this kind of budding relationship, that they see things the same way. It may not be a bad ball, it might just be a bad break.
Ty Simpson now back in at quarterback. He and Milroe have been splitting the quarterback duties for the White. Bryce Young handling all of the duties for the Crimson. You talk about Burton. Jermaine Burton comes over from Georgia. And in this day and age in college football, Matt Stinskam, I just find it so bizarre that a player that you just played in the SEC championship and the national championship, and I bet there was no love lost between Burton and Alabama, that he now plays here at Alabama.
It's kind of crazy, right?
It's just weird.
This is the age of football that we have, right, where the jerseys, they can kind of swap in and out. You used to see that at all-star games. Now you see it, at the end of a season, especially given the fact that you're talking about having won a national championship. But you have to think part of it is the fact that not only do you have a Heisman winner pulling the trigger, but an offense that was throwing it 36 times. You're putting up 40 points a game and has an opportunity, looking at that wide receiver room, to perhaps be a primary target. All of that would be attractive. Seemingly, Jermaine Burton with a chance to improve and embellish on his career so far from a statistical standpoint.
You see Ty Simpson, he's able to use his feet, one of the top-rated dual-threat quarterbacks in the country, number 2, according to ESPN's recruiting rankings. And here's how quickly college football changed. And this isn't an exaggeration or hyperbole in one bit. 3 years ago, Stinch, the college football world would have gone ballistic had a guy not only transferred within conference, but within a rivalry like Alabama and Georgia. Remember when these coaches would block interconference transfers? Now Alabama is going to rely on 2 of them, and Eli Ricks and Jermaine Burton. It's happened overnight.
It really has, and it's something that even Coach Saban was addressing earlier this week, and kind of intimated that he had some questions, if not issues, with where the landscape is now. Even the week of the national championship game, is that this the fluidity of these rosters and the ability to pull players from other programs and have some of your own players from your own roster head elsewhere. Crimson Tide's got a player headed over to Kentucky this year. I mean, this has happened before many times. And you have to wonder, how often and how much energy they're going to have to place in recruiting your existing roster, much less prospective players.
We, in the meetings that we have, because we all 3 of us, Matt Berry, Matt Stinskam, Chris Button, we all call games during the season. So we have meetings with coaches every week. And I'd say at least from the 14, 15 games that I called last year, including the bowl games, anytime you had a meeting with one of these coaches, the one element above all else that comes up is the transfer portal, and now the priority placed on having to now manage your current roster to make sure that there are players that are maintaining their happiness on your roster because of how easy it is to transfer immediately. You see Jeremiah Alexander getting for the sack on Ty Simpson. It's a running clock. So we're going to go to the fourth quarter. I know Chris has thoughts on some of the conversations with the portal and NIL, but right now it is all white. 19-7 over the Bryce Young-led Crimson. Will Anderson's been the star. Nick Saban's coaching him up, and Jahmyr Gibbs, welcome to Tuscaloosa. We'll go to the fourth quarter of the Alabama spring game after this. You look at the quarterback performances today. Bryce Young, a quarterback of his own Crimson team. Jalen Milroe, Ty Simpson splitting the reps for the Whites. Both of them have played well, especially Milroe, who has locked down that number 2 job. Ty Simpson, the number 2 rated dual threat quarterback in the country, and an early enrollee. As we welcome you back here to the 4th quarter of the Alabama spring game. It is a running clock. There is weather. This thing is moving right along. And Bryce Young, we knew we'd see this. You're going to throw him for intentional grounding. And Saban just told him to pick up the flag, so you're not doing that. He can do that in his own spring game.
That's the edit button.
Yeah. He's like, you know what? Go ahead and pick that up. We're good here. But, you know, we expect now with Bryce in this learning curve. Here's 2nd and 10. He waltzes into a pretty good situation last year with Jamison Williams, Mechie, Bold. Like, that was a good situation to be in. You just got to redo it, and you got to restart, and you got to familiarize yourself with the chemistry that you now have to build.
Yeah, you know, the timing's better in that regard, and that, you know, you come in, and now you are the quote-unquote new starter, and no one really questioned whether or not Bryce Young would have been the starter going into last year. But you had all these known commodities around you in the offensive backfield with you, along the edges of your offensive front, and certainly out wide at receiver. That's ideal, and boy, did he capitalize on that. And now, with all these transitions everywhere but really that quarterback position, especially in that passing game, you've got a guy that's an established starter and an accomplished starter at that, and a chance to not only build into the existing relationships from the guys that are already on this roster, but then also to take a guy like a Jahmyr Gibbs and insert him into the offensive backfield like he has right now, or Jermaine Burton.
Pressure again. That was Dallas Turner, number 15. You know, there's always going to be a handoff at quarterback at Alabama. And it seems like every year there's a handoff, something special happens. You know, Jalen Hurts to Tua Tagovailoa, you know what happened there. Tua to Devontae Smith in the national championship, which beat Georgia. Tua then hands off to Mac Jones. Mac Jones now hands off to Bryce Young. And eventually Bryce Young will have to hand off to either Jalen Milroe or Ty Simpson. But it just speaks to the health and the continuity of this position at Alabama that it's... Every year you think there's going to be a step back with the first-year starting quarterback. That quarterback ends up setting records.
Yeah, I mean, and you think, you know, not too far distant pass, you take a guy like a Jacob Coker, right? They run it all the way to the end. I mean, it's their ability to, in those years where there might be a gap, pick up in the transfer and be able to leverage that, even at a position like quarterback. Hasn't been necessary very often here. As you see Jalen Milroe, and this is what they knew they had in him. We saw the arm strength, especially in the first half. And they know that if he can escape the pocket, he can be a game breaker with the ball in his hands. But it's rare that you ever see a dip, and it certainly seems to be the case where the quarterback room is in good hands. Now it's just a matter of building around that position, especially at skill position along that front. That even starts this year.
We were talking about the transfer portal. They had a quarterback transfer to Arizona State that was on this roster for Alabama. Bear Bryant's grandson, as it were, transferred out to Tempe. But rarely do you see some of these quarterbacks portal out of here, Chris, because they're walking into a situation where they know when they get the keys to the offense, it's going to be high-flying time.
Well, and that was one of the things we talked about with Nick Saban this week, is you're starting to see as spring practices end across the country, players realize who's going to start and who's not. And we've seen a lot of players enter the transfer portal because you have before May 1st if you want to be eligible for a team for the next season. And how Saban handles it. And he said, listen, we want to be fair and honest with everyone, but I believe resiliency is a significant part of being successful. And when you look, Mac Jones is a perfect example of that, because he didn't start until his senior season, but he got several years to learn how to be great. So he says, we want people to stay. We want people to grow and learn. But listen, if you're not happy here, then go someplace else. I'm not going to sit here and not be honest with you, which makes after today and the next 2 weeks will be a very interesting time for college football.
You'd mentioned, you know, after spring ball. Paul Tyson was the quarterback that left Arizona State. I don't blame him. I mean, look at this room. Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson. And it is, we're going to get that next wave of transfers coming up. And instead you played college football at a high level, why would you want to transfer out of Alabama or some of these bigger programs where you're coached by the best, you're surrounded by the best, and you know that you're ultimately going to get your opportunity to prove that you're one of the best in the country?
Yeah, maybe it's that last part that you start to question is, am I gonna get on the field here, even if I'm a really good football player? Because it runs pretty deep. You think about a Jonathan Allen who's here today, and you're talking guys that as they rotate out of here, you're going, wow, man, how are they going to replace like an Ashawn Robinson? What are they going to do next? Well, here comes talents like a Jonathan Allen who wasn't a starter, a contributor, sure. Ends up being a Heisman Trophy candidate finalist. And then it's when he leaves, what are they going to do? Well, then you plug in a Quentin Williams, and you're sitting there going, wow, there's a lot of depth on these rosters. And maybe you grow impatient. And that's, I think, happening more and more where guys say, I want to play now. And perhaps it's impulse control or instant gratification, impatience, whatever you want to call it, and they're afforded that opportunity. If you don't think you're going to get your shot and it's not going the way you want, especially in spring ball, it's a great point by Chris, then maybe you just start taking recruiting visits and spring ball turns into spring recruiting season.
I'm of the opinion we can talk about this the rest of the way as we'll get to Alabama's schedule in a minute, but there needs to be a portal lockup. The portal needs to lock after a certain date and then reopen after a certain date, not have all this in season where it's just open season on players that may or may not be happy or unhappy with their program. But let's take a look now at Alabama's 2022 schedule. For the first time in a decade, they're actually going to open up with a game at home, September 3rd against Utah State. And then you've got the big one, week 2, Alabama at Texas. What a fantastic football matchup that's going to be. They've got Louisiana Monroe September 17th. Then they get into SEC play on the 24th. Now in a few years, that Texas game will be an SEC game. But you take a look at the schedule, the road games at Texas, at Arkansas, in conference now at Tennessee, at LSU, at Ole Miss. You don't get it off here in this conference.
No.
And Alabama, back-to-back weeks at LSU and Ole Miss, that's going to be a defining moment of their season.
There's no question. And you think back to last year and even the back half of the season, and it seemed maybe a foregone conclusion. Bama's going to lock up that division championship, and then pretty close game versus Arkansas, and then an incredibly close game versus Auburn in the Iron Bowl.
And unexpectedly against LSU, close game.
Great point. And you're just sitting there going, look, even in a year where it seems as if it shouldn't be competitive, and then all of a sudden these teams jump up, and it is. The fact is, and this isn't a guarantee now, is that Alabama has earned everyone's best shot. They are going to unload the gun. There's nothing left in that playbook. You will see looks like the LSU game, for example, where they changed their entire third down defensive philosophy to attack this Alabama offense and had success. Did things that they had not shown all season long. And why is that? Because there's no sense in saving it, and you're probably going to need it. So they get everyone's best shot, but they also get some strange counter punches that you haven't seen all season long. But that's, in a lot of ways, that's just a sign of respect. We're going to unload everything we got on you.
In the college football playoff era, Nick Saban's had his team in the national championships 6 times.
Wow. That hurdle, Matt, let me I'm just standing here.
Yeah, Trey Sanders.
I think, I go about 6'6". I think he could have jumped. If I was standing straight up, I think he almost would have cleared me. This is unbelievable.
Oh, wow, yeah. Kyrie Jackson was the one that it was used as an Olympic hurdle.
You get posterized, in hoops, somebody dunks on you. You don't ever want to be the hurdle.
Yeah, you don't want to be hurdleized.
Hurdleized, that's right. It's a verb now.
It is. We've done it right here on TV. So another third down opportunity for Bryce Young that falls incomplete, intended for JoJo Earl. He's fun to talk to. I enjoy conversations with Bryce Young. For someone of his ability, winning the Heisman Trophy and his stature in the sport, what a humble young man with how he handles and carries himself.
Yeah, no question. And you could see mutual respect. Henry To'oTo'o jumping on the call at the same time, and they're just talking about how they interact as leaders, leadership council. And To'oTo'o has a great deal of respect for Bryce Young as well. And they're talking about defensively, their emphasis on that side of the ball has been working on missed tackles, getting the ball out, not a lot of forced fumbles last year. And I thought it was interesting. It ended up kind of being a throwaway comment, but where Henry To'oTo'o said, we're like, do you ever get the ball out on Bryce? If he's ever scrambling, was like, no, never. You can't get the ball out on that guy, which is interesting from a ball security standpoint.
Sure.
You think it'd be a running back, maybe receivers. No, you can't get the ball out of Bryce Young's hands.
We've had the emergence of, a couple of players each and every spring game. There's a spring game star. We didn't need to anoint Will Anderson a star. He's done that in his own right. But I'm telling you, over the last quarter and a half, Dallas Turner is going to be an absolute problem.
Just a menace. And to me, different build. He's not as thick as 31 and Will Anderson Jr., but he's twitching. You can see him when he comes off the ball, where you're going to talk about a lightning fast first step. And you see that, of course, out of 31. 15 opposite him, he's not far behind. And it's just such a difficult thing. What are you going to do? Slide your protection to one or the other?
As Ty Simpson takes a shot deep, intended for Aaron Anderson. Little guy with speed out of New Orleans, 5'9", 184. He's had some highlights throughout spring workouts. Quandarius Robinson provided the quarterback pressure. It's amazing, too, what steady leadership could do for the health of your locker room. And everything we've heard coming out of Tuscaloosa this spring is that in terms of healthy leadership, this team has everything you need to compete and win another national title.
And what's interesting, too, is, not just great leaders from a skill set standpoint, great players. You want your best players to be your leaders. And you can't just anoint that. The locker room knows it. The huddle knows it. If a guy just got slapped, they put a C on your jersey, that doesn't make you a captain. That's just kind of a label. And these guys have earned it, probably maybe even most notably Henry To'oTo'o, the fact that he was able to assert himself as a leader and be recognized as one so early in his time here at Alabama. But same could be true even for the Bryce Youngs. You got some of your best players, Jordan Battle, obviously a known leader and a part of that pound. So as the ball pops out, they're saying incomplete pass. Coach Saban saying, flip it around on the 4th down attempt. Would have been a conversion, or a potential conversion anyway.
Let's have another look here. Yeah, I don't think Oots ever was able to hang on to Robbie Oots. Yeah, didn't quite complete that, make a football move. Ricks was able to fall on. It's going to be an incomplete pass. It's going to give Bryce Young another opportunity here with 5:03. Rain started to come down quite a bit. So, look, as much as they may not like it, as much as Chris and Stitch may not like being down there, you're getting rain wraps. I mean, you can't duplicate those.
I got a new appreciation for Chris and what she does down
here. We had a text chain, and we were saying, hey, let's just go up in the booth. And Chris was like, it's the conditions, just deal with it.
This is Stitch yesterday. Oh, wait, I have to look at the weather. I never realized that that's what you do. You have to come prepared, which you did not. But that poncho looks very good on you today, my friend.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a last minute purchase.
Wet ball drills, perhaps. We'll take a look at the radar here coming into Tuscaloosa. It's right on top of us now. We've been expecting this throughout the afternoon. We had a brief clearing a while ago, then that major storm is moving through the area. You're a die-hard Tide fan in those ponchos. Watch a little spring football here. There's Burton to the outside. Tackled by Jalen Moody. You know what? I'm glad you said that, Stitch. Right? We do need to appreciate the reporters and the crews on college football Saturdays. Even at the beginning of the season, it's hot and it's humid. Then you get that real peak, nice fall weather, that crisp, that cool. And then comes the winter and the Big Ten game or something in the Midwest that you want nothing to do with.
Yeah, I got to tell you, man, that my notes are drier. The air is cleaner. The food is existent up in the booth. They're starving, man. I'm getting my steps in.
You've learned you have to laminate your notes for days like this. There's a 3-week period that the weather's really great during college football. The beginning and the back end, not so much.
It was Dallas Turner again. Let's do this, Stitz. Let's give it with 3:21 left. I think we've got enough of body of work. Who would you give the A-Day MVP to?
God, it's tough. I mean, you mentioned Dallas Turner quite a bit. I could give him a nod. There's no question. Gibbs had a couple of nice runs. Maybe not quite enough. I'm inclined to think that it would be somebody from the one defense. I'm okay with Turner getting the nod. What do y'all think?
I'd say Turner's in the conversation. Will Anderson's exempt from the conversation.
Yeah.
He's not allowed to be in there because he's the best player in college football, so of course he's going to be the best player out here. I think Jalen Milroe has done a nice job today of making the coaching staff feel good that if for some reason, something unforeseen happened with Bryce, that they'd have a kid that they could put in there that's going to be an electric quarterback.
I like that.
Might not be the MVP, but if you were to ask these players down here, their jaws drop when they watch Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, the oohing and awing down here over his ability. Also, this kid's as well.
And see, he knew I gave the MVP. He's like, thanks, Matt. I'm just going to trot this in for a touchdown.
That was his exclamation point for your nod, Barry, right there.
I mean, you read some of the stories about coming out of spring camp.
You saw the second, maybe even third gear on that run. And that's another one of those plays. We've seen a couple from Jalen Milroe today where I don't care what color jersey he's wearing. I'm not sure that they get him on the ground.
It's down there in pregame warm-ups. Chris and I were down there, and I said, look at Milroe. Like, he looks like create a player.
Like an action figure.
Right. So they're going to be eating steak. Bryce Young, I'm sure, though, NIL's treated him well enough where he can go buy the entire Crimson team their own steak dinner, win or lose. But in the terms of what this game was played for, the white is going to enjoy the steak dinner as the winners of this game.
Bill O'Brien was telling us, he's like, I'm a guy from the Boston area. I'll eat Franks and beans. That's not such a bad deal.
Go on top. I'm going to throw the flag there. As Milroe is looking for Christian Leary, who's had a nice afternoon. And, Leary's taking advantage of the opportunity. 5 catches, 106 yards, and a touchdown. Coach is going to have to look at his tape from spring in this game and say, where can we get Leary involved?
Yeah, it definitely seemed like there was intention to get him some targets in this game, especially when the two offenses out there, he and Jalen Milroe, Simpson as well. It seems as if Christian Leary, who was singled out in our call with the coaches as far as his performance and what he's been able to put together so far this spring.
Malachi Moore has been flagged a couple of times. He's kind of had a difficult afternoon, but Milroe forced out of the pocket. Throw that into the end zone. It falls incomplete, intended for Taiyu Jones-Bell. But we were talking about the recruiting class earlier. 3 more talented receivers coming in this summer. Shaz Preston, Isaiah Bond, and Kobe Prentice all on their way.
Matt, you mentioned it earlier, too. Tyler Steen, offensive line guy, transferred from Vanderbilt, I think on Tuesday of this week. And that's a guy he's played a lot of football and a lot of winning caliber football, regardless of the prospects of his team around him. The guy's got 33 starts, bulk of those at left tackle. We talked a lot about this game, the fact that Bryce Young and his team They're going to be eating the beanie weenies. Well, part of it's because you got to have some guys to keep them upright and give them a clean pocket to work from. And Tyler Steen's a guy that could perhaps contribute to that. Didn't get an opportunity to impact this spring.
So some situational football here towards the end of the scrimmage here. As Alabama is going to conclude their spring workouts. The team will come back end of May to begin summer workouts, not training camp, but summer workouts. And then the calendar typically works right around as a flag down on the play it's going to be holding. Typically, calendar right around that first week of August is when most teams around the country report for training camp.
Timeout. White team, their second.
So out comes the field goal unit. I'm wondering, just as a show of solidarity, does Coach Saban, does he eat the beanie weenies or is he going with the steak?
He eats whatever he wants.
That's a great point.
You know, he might beans weenie as an appetizer. Then he'll go in with the winners and have some steak. Reichard's
like a progressive dinner?
Yeah, if you will. Yeah,
sure.
42-yard for Reichard. Let's take a look at some of the offseason notes around the conference. Brian Kelly, I mean, there's never a dull moment. There hasn't been yet since Brian Kelly was reeled in at LSU by Scott Woodward. What a big hire that was. Spencer Rattler. Oklahoma loses both of their quarterbacks. He's at South Carolina for Beamer. And Zach Evans, he was the #1 rated running back in the 2020 class from TCU. He lands with Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. But what do you expect out of Brian Kelly at LSU taking over for Ed Orgeron?
Man, I got to tell you, the expectations really, really high. As you think about what he was able to do at Notre Dame, and the folks in and around the Southeastern Conference might question what was accomplished. That was a team and a program that was contending in and around the college football playoff perennially. And now you're going to go to LSU, a team that, let's be real, has been pretty accomplished regardless of who's coaching.
Right.
You Les Miles in there, you win a national championship. You get in an Ed Orgeron, win a national championship. Now you bring in a Brian Kelly, a guy, and the type of job that he did at Notre Dame, to a different set of challenges, to be sure, separate and apart from what there will be at LSU. And you think, man, better win early, because the expectation would be is that now this might have been, a missing component.
You nailed it. Brian Kelly, Bryce Young sacked again by Dallas Turner. I'm telling you, this guy.
That's my MVP.
Okay. Look, no argument. I mean, he is just an absolute stud. Back to Brian Kelly, there was always that but at Notre Dame, and that there are different and harder qualifications of what it takes to be a college football player at Notre Dame. That barrier is gone for Brian. Not to say, look, LSU, fine university, it doesn't have the same placements on it to get in, and so that's gone for Brian Kelly. He's walking into a situation where now he's going to have every bit of the resources, talent, and what he needs to win a national championship at LSU.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're sitting there and you're going, look, you don't want to say that program's an autopilot program, but they don't lack talent, and they certainly haven't lacked for achievement. So you look at that game, of course. This program in Alabama is certainly not unfamiliar with a Brian Kelly coached program. We've seen Notre Dame in a national title game back in 2012. But now you couple it with, certainly a different box of ingredients at LSU. How about this with Gibbs?
Him out of the backfield. Look, we've talked about it. What's it going to take for Bryce to get that chemistry with his new receivers? There's nothing more comfortable for a quarterback than a quick check down to a running back out of the backfield. If they've got that element with a guy that catches a lot of footballs. That early is comfort food for Bryce Young as he gets the comfort with the rest of his receivers.
Yep, man, no question. You know, backed up a little bit, easy completion, give it to a guy, make one guy miss, and maybe skitter upfield for another 10 yards. This is definitely spring game decision making, right? 4th and 10 plus.
At your own 15? Yeah. Oh, there we go. JoJo Earl comes through. Bryce Young throws across the field, across his body, finds JoJo Earl for a gain of 28.
Yep. So, you know, all kinds of things on that play that you probably won't see this fall. Rolling to your left, falling away, throw it back towards the hash mark on a 4th down that for sure you would have punted on.
While the defender kind of eases up on you.
That's right. No black jerseys for Alabama this fall, that's for sure, but sure makes for fun spring football.
Bryce Young taking a shot, double coverage, dropped. That was Kane Williams an opportunity for an interception. Redshirt freshman.
Second time that they targeted Latu downfield. Last time, Jordan Battle came up with a pick. This one nearly intercepted. Bryce Young trying to get it to his big tight end. Incredibly talented. They're looking for more consistency out of number 81. You're talking about the top pass catcher returning on this roster.
Yep. You know, for a couple of years, Jaleel Billingsley was thought to be a player that was going to be the next great tight end. He's since transferred to Texas. As Bryce Young sacked again, Chris Braswell. But yeah, so Cameron Latu, he kind of emerged last year as a go-to for Bryce, and he won the job. It's his. He's the guy now.
And we'll have to step up. Physical can be at the point of attack. It's a big-bodied tight end. And there we just saw Chris Braswell, as you mentioned. That's the 3rd pass rusher Coach Saban was talking about. We're talking about Will Anderson Jr. and Dallas Turner. And he mentioned, hey, man, 41. He's a pretty good pass rusher, too. He's giving Latham all he wants at right tackle right now.
You know, at the core of this entire thing, and Nick Saban's 16 seasons in Tuscaloosa, that's a big hit there on Gibbs. It was Brian Branch. But the core of this thing, how it was built, was on defense. And I know when he brought in Lane Kiffin and he got caught up with the rest of college football, this thing was built on defense. And we're seeing these pass rushes and the Will Andersons and the Dallas Turners and the To'os. This is still the foundation of what they've built here.
Yeah, no question. And you think about those guys, maybe those 3 guys, if we put in Chris Braswell, we're talking about, like Curry and Copeland type stuff. We're harkening back to some pretty impressive pass rushing pairs. You see the ball just kind of come out. Bryce Young fully expected that to be whistled dead with a free rusher. And
they're going to call it.
That's going to be it.
Yep, they're going to call it. The white. Look at the white celebrate. I love it. I mean, the white loves the bragging rights. Why? Because the white was led by everything. Will Anderson and the defense. Jalen Milroe was the quarterback of that team. Let's go down to Chris Button.
Coach, as you wrap up spring, what did you learn about your team?
Well, I think you learn about your team all season long, but, today was a day that, you really see, showtime. Who could play, who couldn't play, who could go out there and be responsible to do the things they needed to do to play winning football. So we're going to learn a lot about the guys that did that. Obviously, we had a tough time blocking pass rush, too many sacks, so we got a lot of things to work on, but it's good to know, and we got other good players that will try to get in there so we can do better in the fall.
As the CEO of this game, do you get steak or weenies and beans?
Whichever I choose, but most of the time I think you can answer that.
Appreciate it.
All right, thank
you. We had just talked about that too. It's like, you know what? Whatever I choose. Stitch, quickly, 10 seconds, your final thoughts here from A-Day.
Well, just prayers up for all the offensive coordinators and line coaches that are going to face the Crimson Tide this year, because it is a menacing pass rush.
So spring ball is over for Alabama. We saw some glimpses of Gibbs. We saw the quarterback room is bright, and we saw the best player in college football take off. Next time we see Alabama, first week of the season. For Matt Stinchcomb, I'm Matt Berry. Thanks for watching the A-Game here on ESPN.